thought I had stress. I thought you had stress. But go to school is a whole lot more stress.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
No, are we there? Oh, hey, a little extra box, Kev. That's no big deal. That happens from time to time. Good Thursday evening. Nice to have you aboard. Appreciate your viewing My State of Mind. You know, there's a difference. There's a clinical difference, the experts will tell you, between stress and anxiety. We tend to marry those definitions. Now, I'm not going to do a speech on that. I've got an expert here, of course, to help me along with this. But, you know, daily stress is one thing. Anxiety is a whole nother matter. I mean, when you're anxious, that's something that, depending on where the clinical diagnosis is, can really be a detriment to your everyday effectiveness. And when this headline came out in the Providence Journal, drawing attention to this survey says, commissioned by the state, Rhode Island schools boiling over with stress, it caused a lot of interest on both the radio and television shows, and I think it's worth us talking about. The original program here is airing on Thursday, August 31st. This might be a conversation you see a couple more times over the course of the fall because it is an important one, no doubt. And we have commissioned the expertise of Sarah Dinklage. She's the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Student Assistance Services, which means she's in the schools and she knows what the heck is going on. Welcome. Nice to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You actually said something to me. Well, first of all, 30 seconds on your organization. You've been around for decades, correct?
Right. We were founded in 1987. And we started as a pilot in 4 high schools. We're now in 47 middle and high schools in Rhode Island.
Doing what specific work?
We are a substance abuse prevention early intervention program. It's an evidence-based national model which places specially trained master's degree level counselors right in the school, 2 to 5 days a week, depending on the size. And these counselors are specially trained to work with students to identify stress, precursors to substance use, trying to identify kids who are at risk for substance use and mental health problems before these problems become chronic and severe and start interfering in their lives, and then to intervene.
Big job.
It is a big job.
So does a kid happy? Do you guys come in and before, during, or after a kid has been identified abusing drugs or alcohol?
We try to get in before. That's ideal. We're in middle schools and high schools, so we are reaching students before they start using. That's the whole premise of the program. But we're also working with students who are using or beginning to use, and then those students who have already started to chronically use. And we do brief intervention, one-on-one counseling. We do group work in schools, and then we refer for treatment those students who need more.
So a pilot program of 4 schools, now 47. Why not the whole system?
Funding. Okay, so there should be, and the state realizes there should be a student assistance program in every single secondary school in Rhode Island. We have tremendous support from the Department of Behavioral Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Hospitals for that, but the problem has been funding. And there is, as my understanding is, there is some legislation on the books now, which may be heard in September, that would expand the reach of student assistance programs.
Where are the 47 schools? Are they scattered?
They're scattered throughout the state, from Westerly to Woonsocket.
And how does the school system engage your services? Do they petition for it, or how does that work?
They would petition for it. Unfortunately, now there is no additional funding. So schools were added over time through needs assessment, also petitioning and applying. There were certain criteria that schools needed to have in order to get a program in the beginning. But now I would dare say most every school would petition, if they could, to have a student assistance program in the school.
Well, based on this data, I mean, you must have looked at some of the data that came out here from this recent survey and said, "Ha, I told you so."
Right.
Right?
Right. And I think that it's important to note that schools, that students are reporting high degrees of stress. They're reporting high degrees of stress in school, but it's also important to note that schools are probably only the tipping point, and that what we're observing is that students are coming to school at close to or exceeding their limits of ability to manage the stress in their lives. So then they get to school, and that's the tipping point. So I don't want to say that schools are causing this amount of stress, but they're the tipping point. And what we try to do is identify those problems early on, and also train the adults in the building how to recognize and get students the help they need.
You seeing differences between suburban and urban schools?
Well, Only in content sometimes, so you might have more poverty in urban schools. That's, let's face it, a very high stressor. But we're seeing levels of stress, levels of relationship issues, bullying, anxiety, depression across the board. I would not say it's more in any one socioeconomic area.
Okay, so this is a question I would probably save to later, but maybe we'll come back to it, but I have to ask it now. Is it because we have the data? Is it chicken or egg? Is the data bringing attention to something that's been around forever at the same level, or has something changed and the anxiety and the stress is way higher than when you and I went to school?
Well, it's a good question, and it's one I get asked a lot. I don't think the data creates the problem, or asking the questions creates the problem.
The reflection on it.
But in terms of whether, yes, there's been stress. There's been stress from the beginning of time. Right. What I think is different about today is the culture that we live in, that students are we're all, adults and youth, bombarded with images 24/7. I mean, there's even research out that shows, in terms of if you are constantly looking at your phone and the news stories and scrolling down and image after image after image, you're going to be at increased risk for depression and anxiety. So, and students, youth, they have social media, multiple social media outlets that they are, again, bombarded with images of people who are, in their mind, looking happier to them, have more friends than them, going to parties they weren't invited to. And it's, we all experienced that, but you didn't experience it 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, I saw recent data. We're going to dig into some of this school data here in Rhode Island, but I saw, some recent data that showed that the more kids are engaged in the screen, the less happy that they are.
That's it.
And the question is, do they know it? Do they know it? Do they know it? I mean, my kid actually, who's 22, just graduated from college, had enough stress to choke a horse, I guess, to be able to get the degree that she was pursuing. Put her phone away for like 3 or 4 days, and told me that she had never felt just better in a long time. I said, well, guess what?
Yeah.
That's something you can do a lot.
That is such an important point that you raise, and it goes even beyond the phone. What you're saying is that one of the ways to reduce stress is to find periods of relief and quiet away from the stressor. So the phone, the social media, constantly 24/7 is a tremendous stressor. So we highly recommend that you're not going to get a 15-year-old to give up his or her phone or social media, but take a break from it.
So when you make those suggestions in the field, what's the response generally?
Well, students look at you, they roll their eyes, they're kind of skeptical of that. So we kind of do it as a challenge. And we do this with adults too. I mean, adults and youth are really the same on this, unless you are not on social media, and there's something to be said for that. But we recommend the adults, teachers, counselors, people in the field take a break from the phone. But I think that the reason why all this matters is these high stress impacts learning. Students can't learn when they're stressed. If you think about the fundamentals of learning, what you need to learn, you need a good night's sleep, you need to be able to focus, and you need memory. And guess what is impacted when you're stressed? All
right, so I did some Kmart diagnosis there, although I did stay at Holly and Express last night, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. Did you ever see the commercial? Got to know the commercial to know the joke. Stress and anxiety are clinically two different things. What are you finding more?
Well, I think, first, before answering that, I think the important thing to realize is that stress, again, isn't all bad. Anxiety is more of a negative, and when it's starting to intrude in your life and interfering with your sleep, with your ability to focus, and your ability to, to pay attention. So your thoughts are intruding. You feel panicky. high degrees of stress can lead to, chronic anxiety or anxiety disorder. It can lead to depression. But the important thing is that stress alone, you're not going to eliminate all the stressors. You get to the point of we've all experienced stress. So in this article, it talks about students are worried about getting into good colleges. They're worried about getting good grades. Well, in a sense, those are good things to worry about. Yes, you should want to get good grades. You should want to go to college or get a job. It causes stress. You're not going to eliminate those stressors. The key is teaching children and adults how to manage their stress in healthy ways. Because what we see kids doing is self-medicating and using alcohol and other drugs to manage stress. And so naturally that's an unhealthy way to do it. So we're trying to train teachers, trying to train students healthy ways of managing stress.
All right, we'll come back. We'll dig into some of the concepts in this data. Stay with us. I think it's important to once again kind of reaffirm that we all had stress in school. Although the truth of the matter is, Sarah, I think I was saying on the radio the other day, I just been through. You have a 21-year-old, I have a 22-year-old, so mine just graduated with a bachelor's, and now the master's thing begins. And,
Yes,
but
know it well.
the whole. The junior year in high school thing right up to the college thing was crazy.
Absolutely.
I was way more involved than my parents were with me. I chose a school. I went away. I said, see you later. My mom cried. I said, see you, Mom.
Yeah.
I drove 4 states away and hardly ever came back. Called once a week, on the payphone.
Exactly.
Never thought
Live that life.
You're right. Never thought we'd be this old to actually go back and think life was better when we were all walking uphill both ways in 4 feet of snow. Men were men and sheep were sheep and all that kind of silly stuff. But the point here is that we've allowed it.
We've allowed it.
We've kind of, I don't, what the hell is the matter with us that we keep feeding it? Is it our own egos? Is it our alter egos? Is it our legacy? What is it?
Yeah, I think you hit on it. Our generation, we are, you could say we're the generation of helicopter parenting, but that again is not across the board. But in terms of, I think it's our ego. We want our kids to have the best.
Where's your kids going? Oh, she's going there. Oh, she's going there. Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then when parents in my generation get together, all we do is what? Talk about our kids. It's like enough.
Right.
Enough.
And the reason why that can have a negative impact, you have to balance with the fact there are many young people who don't have parents who care at all or helping them at all with anything. So it's kind of a luxury that you can talk about over-parenting, if you will, because there are children who are not being parented. But I think the negative impact that this kind of over-parenting does is it gives a message that you, the youth, are not competent to kind of handle it. So if your parents kind of over involved, getting into every single peer dispute that you're having in school, it kind of gives the message you can't handle this. So it's a very fine line. You want to be loving and caring and notice what's going on with your child and monitor your child.
But arm's length, man. The older they are, the more arm's length you gotta be. Here's what some of the issues were in the survey. Now again, this is not Sarah's survey. It's the state survey, but SurveyWorks student survey topics: anxiety, pride, culture, risk, protective outcome, the school climate, school engagement, school learning strategies. So this is absolutely. Do we have a link online, Lex? Okay, on foxprovidence.com with the Daniel State of Mind program there, you'll find the link to the entire survey. It's interesting. But you said something prior to the show that I think was kind of fascinating. The headline and the sub-headline that we first used, Rhode Island schools boiling over with stress. Teachers are living in constant anxiety, and students worry about grades. Many believing that teachers aren't concerned about their emotional well-being. That ain't good.
Well, stress is contagious, and let's face it, teachers are under tremendous stress. I want to put that out there. They're under tremendous pressure. I don't know of a profession that has as many bosses as a teacher does. Any profession that has as many people that they are accountable to. So I think that creates a pressure cooker. So, you know, you've got teachers under more, and this is changed. The teachers have more pressure, more demands than they ever have before, and on top of that, their students are coming to school with additional problems and stress-related problems, and teachers are. They haven't been trained they're not trained in school for how do you manage student stress, how do you ask about it, how do you talk about it, what can you as a teacher do? You're not a counselor, but there certainly are things you can do.
It seems to me this survey was kind of 6 to 12, but the high school breakout is problematic in that it shows students by large numbers suggesting that they don't have anybody that the teacher is no longer. I mean, I can name off the top of my head teachers that I could go to back in the day and just say, hey, what do you think? Da-da-da, da-da-da. And they take time. Now, I'm sure there are excellent teachers all over every system, every school, that still are available to do that. But it seems like the kids say, I don't know. I wonder if it's one of the two things. I've noticed that kids, and forgive me for being one of those kids today, they can't articulate. So if they are bubbling over, or if they are worried, they're less apt. Then this is a generalization, of course, but they're less apt to be able to say, "Hey, Mr. Jones, or Mrs. Smith, I got stuff going on."
Right.
Because they don't talk very well. They're in their damn phones so much. They're not verbal.
Right, and the thing that teachers can be trained to do, and this is the way this is a lot of the work that we're doing in schools, teachers can be trained to notice and observe those nonverbal and verbal cues that a student of theirs is in trouble, that is either on stress overload, depressed, anxious, suicidal. They can be trained to observe and notice. They can also be trained to then know what to say, to demonstrate to that child that they're not alone, that I'm here, and then they can be trained to refer that child for help, and where you refer that child for help, right in the school. So I think
Do they want to be trained?
I think they do. I think that they don't want to have this all dumped on them. They don't want to hear that they are now responsible for, all the mental health needs of children, and they shouldn't be. They have, as I said, they're carrying a heavy load already with educating students. But they know that, these issues are barriers to learning. Students will not learn under stress. None of us do. You're stressed out, you don't hear or absorb any information that's coming in. So teachers are concerned about it, schools are concerned about it because it impacts their mission, but they want tools and resources for, what to say to a student, without getting into a counseling session, but what can they say that demonstrates connection and then refers and gets the student help that they need.
This conversation, I mean, I can tell how good you are, but I'm overwhelmed, and I'm just thinking about you on the couch, some of you on the couch who are just saying, oh, for God's sake, just shut up and teach. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Sarah Dinklage is the Executive Director of the Rhode Student Assistance Services. She's in 47 schools with her organization and funded by the state. There are a whole lot more schools out there, I'm sure, that could use this assistance. But for the person on the couch who's listening to our conversation, and if you missed any of this, of course, you always can find the show on foxprovidence.com. Come on, you social service nuts, you feel good liberals, all you touchy-feely, shut up and teach them, and if a kid's got problems, I mean, I see where that old school disposition is hardly appropriate, but I also see some pragmatism in it, that we're really, really wringing out a lot of this psycho stuff. Where's Where's the truth? I mean, you're in the business, so you've got to be objective about this.
The truth is simply, and what I tell school administrators when we're going into a school for the first time, is that school, it's not the mission of the school to be a social service agency. It's not the mission of the school to be a mental health center or a child guidance clinic. We're only there, I say, the only reason to have us, a student assistance program in your school, is because these problems, drug and alcohol use, family addiction, depression, anxiety, these issues impact the ability of a school to do their mission. They are barriers to learning. They are barriers to success. So, I mean, a principal said to me the other day, and I never heard this, 5, 10 years ago. It was always me trying to sell them. I had a principal say to me the other day, at all the principal meetings he was attending, the #1 problem interfering with learning and test scores and all of that are students' mental health issues. So, that's an awareness that's in schools' mind. And one of the ways to easily address this, or start to address it, is simply by programs like this, but doing this in the schools, raising awareness about the impact of stress and mental health issues on learning. Simply by talking about it, you can reduce the stress. It gives the message you're not alone.
Talking about it in group. In assembly?
In assembly, in school
one-on-one.
announcements. For example, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So we'll be working with schools to, in a variety of different ways, raise awareness about the warning signs of suicide. What kinds of things do teachers know? Can teachers notice? Can school social workers notice? Can peers notice about their fellow students who may be at risk? And again, just by talking about it and raising awareness, it gives that strong message. You are not alone. And then you need to certainly train, if you do see a student, whether you're a student yourself or a teacher or a social worker, what do you do? And how do you ask the question and get that student help?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My high school years, for the most part, and the halo effect comes into play here a little bit, but were terrific. My kid often tells me, "Dad, you still want to be in high school." I was lucky enough to have a great experience. But I remember times when I felt all by myself in a group of 1,200. Never mind those kids who didn't feel like they were part of it, many of whom have grown to be major league success stories. A lot of us kind of measure that 4 years of high school as a real default place in our lives, right? We go back, we see people 30 years later and say, holy cow, you became something. Or people who we thought were going to become something didn't.
Right.
But for the most part, character and where people are going are more or less found in that 9 to 12 space. But it's really fluid, isn't it?
It is fluid. It is fluid, and I grew up in a small town on Cape Cod, and you knew everybody in the town and in the school, and we're still in touch to this day. You know who did what, and people talk about the good old days. Well, I remember the good old days. There was a lot of bad stuff going on in families, in the community.
Maybe we just have to remember that, right?
Right.
Listen, we could talk all day. We'll get you on the radio soon and talk more about this. Again, we'll link your organizational information and some of your recommendations on the website at foxprovidence.com. See the survey on foxprovidence.com. But the moral of the story here is keep talking.
Keep talking, absolutely.
Keep listening.
Keep listening, noticing, and talking.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Final word and we come back. Stay with us. Hey, listen, tomorrow night, let me reach over here and grab this book here. Yeah, this Beyond Snowden. For those of you who've always worried about, your privacy rights and the whole Snowden story and the 2013 episode that really turned the nation and the free world on its ear regarding, who knows what about you, where and how, via the telephone, the internet, or whatever, you'll want to be here tomorrow night to see Timothy Edgar talk about the story behind Snowden. It's phenomenally interesting. I know, because we already did the show. See you on the radio tomorrow at 3 on WPRL. Good night.